this DevOps era, there is increasing pressure to speed up time to market. To meet this demand, organizations are relying on increasing number of tech stacks, deployment models, and open source software without clear security requirements. It would be an understatement to say that modern software is growing in complexity. As a result, 75% of the vulnerabilities are application related. Yet, there is no prescriptive and measurable way to analyze and improve software assurance posture for organizations. To address these challenges, we recently released OWASP SAMM 2.0. My name is Hardik Parekh, and I'm here to share my knowledge about how to navigate DevOps security journey at scale with OWASP Software Assurance Maturity Model 2.0. A little bit about myself. I started my career as a software engineer. I got an opportunity to lead various security teams and programs at medium and large corporations like Dell EMC, Intuit, Amazon, and Splunk. I'm also on advisory boards for a few security and data privacy startups and a nonprofit organization, CompTIA, which issues IT security certifications such as Security Plus and CISA Plus. Throughout my career, I contributed to industry through various safe code publications, SANS Top 25 Programming Errors, CVSS version 3.0, BSIMM since version 1, and OWASP SAMM, and recently NIST SSDF. For those of you who might not be familiar with BSIMM, BSIMM is another software security maturity model, which is descriptive in nature. It was developed by Cigital by interviewing 6 independent software vendors from Safe Code founding member companies, and EMC was one of them. It's more of a descriptive model of what activities other security organizations are performing at each maturity level. I started my career as a software engineer, and ever since then, I've always focused on how do we optimize our software security assurance posture using automation. I also started contributing to OWASP SAMM back in 2016 and have been co-author and one of the core members of OWASP SAMM project since then. Now, before we start the talk, I would like to get the legal stuff out of the way. I'm not speaking on behalf of my current or previous employers, nor am I here as a representative of my current or previous employers. My opinions are solely my own, and they do not reflect those of my current or previous employers. Now let's look at a quick agenda. I assume many of you might not be familiar with OWASP SAMM. Hence, I'll spend some time on introducing OWASP SAMM, covering what is SAMM, why do we need a SAMM, what are some of the core principles on which SAMM is built upon, and a project history. After that, I will go over the changes we introduced in SAMM 2.0 or 1.5. And last, we will discuss how to apply SAMM in your organization so you can help SAMM to navigate DevOps security journey at scale. Now, if you're playing one of these 15 plus roles, you will be able to take some valuable information from this talk and apply it to your organization starting from tomorrow. Let's look at what is SAMM. OWASP SAMM is one of the flagship OWASP projects. Now, flagship status is given to projects with strategic importance to both OWASP and AppSec in general. OWASP SAMM is a framework for software assurance that provides effective and measurable way for all types of organizations to analyze and improve their software security posture that is tailored to the specific risk facing that organization. SAMM is full of useful resources that will help with evaluating organizations' current security practices, providing recommendations or suggestions for growing and maturing those practices, providing a way to demonstrate concrete improvements over a period of time, and defining and measuring security activities throughout the life cycle. One of the big benefits of SAMM is that it is vendor agnostic. SAMM can be done in-house, or you can have one of several AppSec consulting firms help you with the assessment and creating plans and roadmaps. Why do we need a model like SAMM? In quest to increase speed, today's organization is growing in complexity without much clear security requirements. As a result, almost 75% of vulnerabilities are application related. If you look at latest security breaches like Equifax or Capital One, they are more application related. To standardize security activities in such a complex software environment, we need a model like OWASP SAMM. I like this quote from George Box, who has been called one of the great statistical minds of 20th century. The most that can be expected from any model is that it can supply a useful approximation to reality. All models are wrong and some models are useful. I'll repeat, the most that can be expected from any model is that it can supply a useful approximation to reality. All models are wrong and some models are useful. And SAMM wants to be that particular model, which is useful enough for all different types of organization and versatile as well. The point is not that you can find an exact model that is going to exactly describe the reality in your organization, because there are too many variables. But you can have a model that is close enough to be useful, and that is what SAMM is aspiring to become. SAMM was defined with flexibility and versatility in mind, such that it can be utilized by small startups, mid-size organizations, and large organizations using any style of development. Additionally, this model can be applied organization-wide for a single line of business or even for an individual project. SAMM is both measurable and actionable. It defines maturity level across business functions and provides clear pathways for improving maturity levels, thus providing a step-by-step navigation plan to achieve higher levels of maturity. Now let's look at project history. Version 1.0 of SAMM was originally created through the Open SAMM project led by Praveer Chandra, an independent software security consultant. After a number of years in 2015, a small group got together at OWASP and worked together to breathe some life into this SAMM project as an OWASP project. First version after that, version 1.1 of OWASP SAMM, expanded and restructured its predecessor into 4 complementary resources: the code document, how-to guide, quick start guide, and the toolbox, which is a spreadsheet that provides simple automation for data collection, metrics, and graphs. Back in 2017, we released version 1.5 of SAMM, which incorporates a refinement of the scoring model to provide more granularity to the scoring in an assessment. We recently launched SAMM 2.0 in February 2020, where we have changed the measurement model one more time to add qualitative measurement to represent how well an organization is performing a particular security practice. In addition, we made few structural changes. As a result, SAMM 2.0 is not backward compatible. I repeat, SAMM 2.0 is not backward compatible. SAMM is built on few core principles. First, an organization's behavior changes slowly over time. Changes need to be smaller and iterative to really take hold and make a difference. Second, there is no single recipe that works for all organizations. SAMM is built with this in mind and supports an organization building a program that is tailored to the risk that particular organization is facing, the culture of that organization, as well as the maturity level of that organization. Third, the guidance related to security activities must be prescriptive. Too often, security initiatives fail due to poor details, lack of communication, or invalid assumptions. Overall, the success of the program will be based on being simple, well-defined, and measurable. Now let's look at maturity levels and assessment scores. SAMM is defined in 3 levels of maturity: ad hoc provisioning, increased efficiency, and comprehensive mastery at scale, mainly through automation. Unlike other maturity models and SAMM predecessors, there are 4 assessment scores for each security activity, which makes fine-grained improvements visible. No implementation, implementation across few or some projects, implementation across at least half projects, and implementation across many or most projects. The key point over here is, in order to make this more practical and pragmatic, we got rid of all. And that is why we chose many or most projects, because in real life, there's always going to be one or two projects where organization might be planning to retire. They're in the process of rewriting, things like that. So there is no point in spending your limited resources in securing those projects. I would rather have you focus on mainly the projects which are being rewritten, which are being developed newly, which are going to be in production for a longer period of time. And that is the reason that we have consciously made a decision to not call out all projects to reach the highest level. Not everyone also needs to make level 3 in all different areas. Similar to Six Sigma or CMMI, the goal is really not to max out on each and every practice. Honestly speaking, that probably won't even be good use of your limited resources. What the target maturity should be for your organization is largely up to you, depending on business drivers and the risks your organization is facing. In version 1.5, we have modified the scoring model to provide multiple choice answers to allow for more accurate assessment. Previously in SAMM and most models, the questions were yes or no, which is great from an academic perspective, but in real world, the answer many times lies in between the two. For example, if you try to answer the following question for education and guidance at level 2, are those involved in development process given role-specific security training and guidance? You know you have trained some of the developers and would like to train some project managers and QA testers. But given the question, do you answer yes or no? The dilemma is, if you answer no, you get no credit and it looks like you aren't working on it, but you are. If you answer yes, you now get full credit and may have issues down the road asking for training budget for other roles because the dashboard says you did it already. With the new model, you can answer something like some or at least half and take the credit, appropriate credit, but also have the ability to show improvements in your score over the period of time when you train, say, project managers and QA testers. Now, based on the user feedback, we have made changes to the measurement model one more time. In SAMM 2.0, we are assessing security activities along two axes. One is the coverage by means of questions, and two, by means of quality, by means of mandatory criteria. Now, this is high-level snapshot of SAMM 1.5. So you understand what changes we have made in 2.0. SAMM is defined in 3 different levels. At the highest level, SAMM 1.5 defined 4 critical business functions. Each business function has 3 security practices, and each security practice has 3 maturity levels. Now, motivation behind the new versions are we want to align. There are 5 motivations basically. First is we want to align the recent development methodologies such as agile and DevOps to make it development methodology agnostic. Now, version 1.5 and its predecessors look more suitable for waterfall methodology, even though it was not meant to be. We realize that it is because it's missing a key aspect of guidance in terms of how to securely build and deploy software, especially since CI/CD has become an integral part of the agile and DevOps methodology. The second motivation is to improve the measurement. Even though SAMM 1.5 addressed the feedback about granularity levels, it still didn't address the question how well an activity is being performed at each level, thus needing some qualitative measurement. The third motivation is to avoid orphan or unrelated activities. There are quite few security activities in SAMM 1.5 were defined such that it lacked consistent theme across different levels of maturity within a security practice, which also resulted in few orphan or unrelated activities such as code signing at level 2. The fourth motivation is to arrange maturity levels in order of increasing difficulty. Other shortcoming of 1.5 and the other its SAMM's predecessors was sometimes security activities at high level were easier to implement compared to security activities at lower levels, which really didn't make sense, and we had to fix that. The fifth and the most important motivation was to improve the production process of SAMM itself. SAMM production process was slow and waterfall, resulting in major work every time we need to release new version. So as a result of that, we had to come up with a new version, and hence SAMM 2.0 came to light. Let's look at SAMM 2.0 framework. This is SAMM 2.0 framework at a very high level, and the areas highlighted here are the changes from version 1.5, which we'll cover in a few minutes. SAMM version 2.0 is defined in 3 levels. At the highest level, SAMM defines 5 critical business functions. Each business function is category of activities related to the nuts and bolts of software development methodologies. For each business function, SAMM defines 3 security practices. Each security practice is an area of security-related activities that build assurance for the respective business function. For each security practice, SAMM defines 3 maturity levels as objectives. Each level within security practice is characterized by a successively more sophisticated objective and more stringent success metrics than the previous levels. Overall, as you increase level of maturity, you should expect higher cost of implementation. If you look at the framework, you can see that governance is more focused on the program itself, looking at more strategic elements, strategy and metrics, policy and compliance, education, guidance, etc. We have renamed construction business function into design and introduced new business function implementation. Now, design, implementation, verification, and operations cover the core of software development lifecycle. Design is focused on threat assessment and security requirements during earlier phases. Implementation is focused on secure build, secure deployment, and defect management aspects. Verification is more focused on testing or verifying aspects. And operations is focused on incident detection and management and environment management, where the app lives on. Let's take a closer look at security practices. Each security practice is divided into 2 streams, stream A and stream B. The purpose of these streams is to align and link activities within the practice over different maturity levels. Each stream has an objective to be reached, and this objective can be reached in increasing levels of maturity. This way, we measure that there are no orphan activities that seem only relevant on a single maturity level. For instance, code signing, as we discussed in SAMM 1.5. Let's take a closer look at one of the security practices, requirements-driven testing, under verification business function. The goal of requirements-driven testing practice is to ensure that the implemented security controls operate as expected and satisfy project's stated security requirements. The former verifies that the application security controls satisfy stated security requirements and validates their correct functioning. These requirements are typically functional in nature. Negative testing addresses the quality of the implementation of security controls and aims to detect unexpected design flaws and implementation bugs through misuse and abuse testing. These streams align and link the activities in practice over different maturity levels. It does so by incrementally building a set of security tests and regression cases and executing them regularly. In its most advanced forms, the practice promotes security stress testing, such as denial of testing, and strives to continuously improve application security by consistently automating security unit test cases and creating automated security regression test cases for all the bugs identified and fixed. Now let's look at secure build. This practice focuses on creating a consistent, repeatable, secure build process and according and accounting for the security of application dependencies. The secure build practice emphasizes the importance of building software in a standardized, repeatable manner, and of doing so using secure components, including third-party software dependencies. The first stream focuses on removing any subjectivity from the build process by striving for full automation. An automated build pipeline can include additional automated security checks such as SAST and DAST to gain further assurance and flag security regressions early in the lifecycle by failing the build, for example. Now, we are not recommending to start failing the build on each and every security issue. That would be too much of disruption for your CI/CD pipeline. But once you build more assurance in your SAST and DAST tools and their lack of false positives, then this is the highest form at which you could start filling the build based on some specific criteria, such as fail the build if SaaS tools identified any critical issues, things like that. The second stream acknowledges the prevalence of software dependency in modern applications. It aims to identify them and track their security status in order to contain the impact of their insecurity on an otherwise secure application. In the most advanced form, it applies similar security checks to software dependencies as to the application itself. Now let's look at secure deployment. This practice focuses on automatically securing deployments to the production environment and all required secrets. One of the final stages in delivering secure software is ensuring the security and integrity of developed applications are not compromised during their development and deployment. To this end, the practice first stream focuses on removing manual error by automating the deployment process as much as possible and making its success contingent upon the outcomes of integrated security verification checks. It also fosters separation of duties by making adequately trained non-developers responsible for deployment. The second stream goes beyond the mechanics of deployment and focuses on protecting the privacy and integrity of sensitive data, such as passwords, tokens, and other secrets required for applications to operate in a production environment. In its simplest form, suitable production secrets are moved from repositories and configuration files into adequately managed digital vaults. In more advanced forms, secrets are dynamically generated and at the deployment time, and routine processes detect and mitigate the presence of unprotected secrets in the environment. Now, my goal is to arm you with knowledge so that you can apply OWASP SAMM starting tomorrow. So let's look at how to apply this model in your organization. Now, this is a typical approach, rolling out SAMM 2.0, which includes implementing these phases in continuous fashion in cyclic manner. But before we do that, we need to spend some time preparing. This phase is the most critical phase for the success of OWASP SAMM application in your organization. I have witnessed several organizations who skip this phase, which resulted in derailing their efforts completely. It consists of following 4 activities. Define the scope. Identify if you would like to roll out OWASP SAMM across the whole organization, across a particular business unit, or an individual application or project level. Once you define the scope, you need to identify key stakeholders and get their buy-in. You need to have different stakeholders buy-in as per your scope. Once you get stakeholders buy-in, you should start spreading the word and evangelize SAMM activities. One of the other most important activities here is also communication. To measure current level of maturity, you need to start with assessments. By conducting interviews with key stakeholders to evaluate current security practices. We recommend in-person interviews versus emails or Slack. This way, you can explain the key intent behind any activity and clarify any potential doubts your stakeholders might have. Now, there are three ways in which you could perform an assessment: a lightweight assessment, a detailed assessment, and a hybrid assessment. The lightweight assessment is simply interviewing key stakeholders and recording their responses. During detailed assessment, you ask for evidence for performance and quality of each activity being performed. In hybrid assessment, you ask for evidence on a need-to-know basis for some activities and not all. I personally use hybrid assessments. Depending on your situation, you could use one of these three different types of assessments. Now, if you involve third-party abstract consulting firm to come and do the assessment, most probably they will do more detailed assessments. But if you are doing this assessment yourself in-house, you would probably choose more of a hybrid assessment model. There are many organizations which go through the full detailed assessment for the first iteration, and for the subsequent iteration, they choose either lightweight or hybrid assessment models. So this way, you could apply different assessment models in different situations. Now, once you record your responses, you can assign maturity levels using SAMM worksheet that we have provided. Let's look at how to calculate maturity scores. Finally, we came up with a new scoring model, which is still primarily based on the coverage. However, we also added quality criteria for each question to add another dimension to the score. Our guidance is to score 0 if a quality criteria are not met. Going back to one of the SAMM core principles of simplicity, we decided to add quality criteria for each question. This way, time to complete an assessment did not significantly increase with SAMM 2.0 model. Overall maturity score for the security practice is calculated by taking average of maturity level 1 between stream A and stream B, and adding that to the maturity level 2 and maturity level 3. Now, once you finish an assessment, you need to define the target as per your organization's business drivers and risk profile, as we discussed earlier. It is very important to spend some time to understand your organization's business drivers and risk profiles during this exercise. Now, if you look at healthcare organization, they are facing different risk profile, and their business drivers are very different versus financial, versus government, versus startup. Once you define the target, the most important step is to estimate the cost of implementation. Many SAMM initiatives fail when folks forget to estimate and plan increased cost of implementation, resulting in lack of resources dedicated to security implementations that they plan for. That's why I highly recommend to work with your program managers and senior management to plan an estimate for the increased cost of implementation for SAMM improvements. The cost of implementation would now become direct input into defining a plan. During this step, you need to determine change schedule as per the upcoming releases and develop or update your roadmap plan over the next 4 or 5 phases. We recommend implementing SAMM change over minimum of 3 phases and maximum of 5 phases. Each phase can span between 3 to 4 months up to 12 months. In order to focus on the highest impact, you should start with high impact security improvements such as training and awareness, as well as threat assessment. Now, once the plan is defined, you need to start implementation. Implement activities using SAMM 2.0 guide. In addition, one could leverage other OWASP projects. Now, SAMM aspires to be an umbrella project for all OWASP projects. That means each OWASP project can map back to one or more of the SAMM business functions and security practices. Here are some example OWASP projects and how they map back to various SAMM business functions. Now, there are some projects, OWASP projects, that can map to multiple SAMM business functions such as OWASP Top 10 and OWASP Mobile Top 10. After the implementation, we need to create and update scorecards on regular interval by capturing scores from before and after an iteration of assurance program build out and communicate progress to the senior management. I have used these scorecards to demonstrate and communicate security improvements to the highest level of management in the companies that I work for. This helps management visualize the progress in overall security improvements, which results into even more support rolling out next phase of security improvements going forward. These are some of the available resources we have to get you started using SAMM 2.0. All these resources are linked to the OWASP SAMM website. I would like to also point out a couple of newly added resources. So SAMM always provide that Excel spreadsheet toolkit. So we call it SAMM toolkit, which was basically an Excel spreadsheet. We now have the same spreadsheet or same questions and quality criteria available in Google Docs version as well. We also have Concord USA donated their online SAMM 2.0 calculator to us. So Concord USA SAMM 2.0 online calculator is another resource for helping you perform the assessment online. There is also SAMM 2.0 dashboard created by Satish Ashwin, who also donated this his contribution to SAMM 2.0 project. And if you have any further questions or feedback, you can always use OWASP SAMM assessment feature request. Now, one more thing before we conclude this talk. We recently introduced SAMM Benchmark Initiative, which helps answer the question, how do I compare to other organizations? Now, SAMM Benchmark Initiative is inspired by BSIMM. As I mentioned earlier, BSIMM is a model which is descriptive in nature, which tells you what other organizations are doing at each maturity level, versus OWASP SAMM is more of a prescriptive model, which tells you what you should be doing at each maturity level. One thing we like about BSIMM is BSIMM score can help you identify where you stand compared to the other organizations. SAMM Benchmark Initiative is aspiring to do the exact same thing. The goal of this project is to collect the most comprehensive data set related to the organization's maturity levels of application or software security programs. And we have make this data collection available in two ways mainly. One is an anonymized data collection, and second one is a verified data collection. So in anonymized data collection, one could choose to submit the real-world data without revealing their name, their contact information, or even their company name. In the verified one, as the name suggests, we verify that, and we, depending on your preference, we can make it available to the rest of the world, or we can just put you as part of the data collection initiative. Now, as someone said, proof of the pudding is in eating it. So if you haven't yet, I really invite you to start using SAMM 2.0 starting tomorrow. Hopefully, I'll come back to B-Sides Philly next year in person to discuss the lessons learned. I really wanted to thank B-Side Philly organizers, volunteers, and sponsors for putting together a great B-Sides Philly conference. I'm really looking forward to visiting in person. And thanks to all of you for listening to this talk. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me at this email address. Thank you.